Paddington at Large by Michael Bond. Read by Hugh Bonneville. Chapter 1. Paddington Breaks the Peace. "I know I keep on saying it," exclaimed Mrs. Brown as she placed an extremely large vegetable marrow on the kitchen scales, "but I'm sure Paddington must have been born with green paws. Have you seen this one? He's beaten his best by over £half a pound." Said Mrs. Bird. "Well, I'll grant you one thing. Green paws are better than idle ones, and at least gardening keeps him busy. We haven't had an upset for weeks now." The Browns' housekeeper hastily touched wood as her eyes followed the progress of a small brown figure clad in a shapeless hat and an equally disreputable-looking duffel coat as it made its way down the garden path before disappearing into a potting shed behind the raspberry canes. Mrs. Bird was never very happy about any of Paddington's activities which took him out of her sight for too long a time, and Paddington's interest in gardening had lasted much too long for her peace of mind. All the same, even Mrs. Bird had to admit that for some time past things had been remarkably peaceful at No. 32 Windsor Gardens. It had all started when Paddington arrived home from the market one day carrying a giant packet of assorted seeds, which he'd bought for the bargain price of 5p. At the time, it had seemed such good value for money that Mr. Brown had been only too pleased to let him have a corner of the garden, and for several evenings afterwards Paddington had been kept very busy counting the seeds, making sure none of them were stuck to his paws as he sorted them into separate piles in order of size before he planted them. Only Mrs. Bird had been full of forebodings. "Woe betide the man in the shop if they don't all come up," she remarked when she noticed the seed packet had been marked down from 15p. "I can see there'll be some nasty scenes." But despite Mrs. Bird's misgivings, within a week or two the first of the seeds began to sprout, and in no time at all Paddington's patch was such a blaze of colour it soon put the rest of the garden to shame. From that moment on, Paddington spent most of his spare time out of doors, and when he began supplying the household with vegetables as well as flowers, everyone had to agree with Mrs. Brown that he must have been born with green paws. "I must say the garden is a picture at the moment," she continued, as she turned to help Mrs. Bird with the washing up. "Even Mr. Curry called out this morning and said how nice it looks." "If I know Mr. Curry," said Mrs. Bird darkly, "he was probably after something. He doesn't say things like that without a very good reason." "Perhaps he wants some cheap vegetables," said Mrs. Brown. "You know how mean he is." "He'll be lucky with that bear," replied Mrs. Bird. "And quite right, too, seeing the state his own garden's in. It's a disgrace." Mr. Curry's lawn was very overgrown with weeds, and Mrs. Bird held strong views about the way the seeds blew over the fence whenever there was a strong wind. "Funnily enough," said Mrs. Brown, "I think he was just getting his lawnmower out when he spoke to me. Perhaps he's going to make a start." "Not before time," snorted Mrs. Bird, "and I shall believe it when I see it. He's much more likely to give the job to some poor Bob-a-Job-week scout than do it himself." Mrs. Bird gave the washing up several nasty jabs with her mop, but if she had been able to see Mr. Curry as she spoke, she would probably have snorted even louder, for at that moment the Browns' neighbour was peering over the fence at Paddington with a very cunning expression on his face. Unaware of the danger he was in, Paddington was sitting on a patch of ground behind the raspberry canes, busy with his accounts. Mrs. Bird paid him strict market rates for all his vegetables, and although she kept a careful note of all his sales, Paddington wasn't the sort of bear to take chances, and he liked to make doubly sure by keeping his own record. He had just finished entering the words "Marrows very large 1" in his notebook when Mr. Curry's voice shattered the morning air. "Bear!" he roared. "What are you doing?"
Sample complete. Ready to continue?